Run, you fools! Hey guys, I am going to be talking about The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Now, I want to sort of cut the record straight with my opinion here, as there is so much discussion around the politics, the wokeness, the inclusion, yada, 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 yada. So I'm just going to go straight for the jugular here. I want to talk about script, character development, storyline, plot, and the continuation into Lord of the Rings. So, first and foremost, my overall opinion of this series is obviously disappointing. As a Lord of the Rings diehard fan, I was there for the original premieres on all of three of Peter Jackson masterpieces. So, starting a nice clean point here in terms of the history look of the series, where it looks back to the dawn of the elves and the original battles. We don't see much battle shots. That's one of the big disappointments in the series, is that the warfare and the sequences of weaponry and hand-to-hand combat, blood, all of that stuff is very, very weak. Now, obviously, in the original trilogy, we see that on a huge scale. We know that the Weta workshops in New Zealand and the Maori stand-ins were a huge part of the Lord of the Rings development. And I kind of sort of feel that it's just got a huge void in terms of fight sequences. Lord of the Rings is all about conflict and terror. Tolkien wrote it during the conflict of World War One. It was his first sort of thoughts to pull upon. And even though these are the prequels, we really are missing that Tolkien-esque warfare, which is a real shame. And it almost has this sort of like it's too romantic in terms of its setting. It's beautiful because it has to be beautiful. Well, it doesn't have to be beautiful because it's a tyranny. It's a build up to the dawn of change for the worse. This is not sort of the golden age. There is orcs, there is elves, there is man. There are still all these huge conflicts happening in Middle Earth. This is not just about a clean separation and the age of let's just carry on and have a lovely time. These emplacements, these castles, these cities are fortified for a reason. Let's see that conflict. Let's see why they fought hard to protect these cities, these dwellings, these civilizations. Instead, the character development is too focused on the sort of I don't know I don't know what I want to call it. It's sort of like prettifying. When we look at Galadriel, it's all about these perfect shots of her looking out to the distance and gazing into the sunset. That's not character development. That's posing. There's something completely different. Even Elrond, he's too busy writing poems in the field. This guy is a deep philosopher. He has had hundreds and hundreds of years of verbal abuse from different civilizations. He's brought together man, beast. He has crossed the lands. He has fought with wizards. He has learned from the darkness that surrounds him. And yet we see a person who is just basically having a laugh. He's too busy writing his memoirs, to be or not to be. I don't want to see that with Elrond. This is Hugo Weaving. This is Mr. Anderson. He is a serious character. And I feel that, Robert Aramayo, he really brings this sort of lightweight sense to Elrond, which I'm afraid doesn't have the footing and gravitas it should have. Now, when we talk about Disa and Sophia Nomvet, who plays the female dwarf, you know what? Play a female dwarf, not a problem. You can go with female dwarfs if you really have to. I don't think it's necessary, but if you really want to, not a problem. I don't have a problem with it. What I have a problem with is this Disa and Durin having a marital breakup during the series. I don't want to see their little kissy smoochy sessions. This is a dwarven kingdom. This is about making swords, digging gems, mining metals, having conflict with everyone around them, greed, infighting. All of this stuff is the stuff I want to see. Instead, I see them going to the family table, having kissy smoochy sessions in front of Elrond. No, creepy, weird, don't do it. I want to see the grit, and this sort of feeling of, Elrond, he's a friend, but he's not a friend. All right, I'll have a little sort of like moody session and invite him to dinner. it's not enough. I'm sorry, there is just not enough there, and it's quite frankly boring. Now, if we sort of take it back to the Hobbiton side of things, in terms of the really soft side, I thought the sort of Hobbit vibe, or this sort of hybrid Hobbit vibe that we've got going on, was like prequels to Hobbits, or Hobbit fusion, or like family, arcs of hobbits, whatever. Basically, they're small people who live in green pastures and don't bother anyone. Again, it was very yada yada yada. And then what? At least with the original Hobbiton, where we had Bilbo, getting peed off with everyone who wants to grab his furniture and take his antiques. I didn't really see the meaning of the village here. Even with Lenny Henry's character, Sadok Burrows, what was he doing? What was the point? He basically had a little moan and then sort of went off for a little trek. And it's like, okay, and what are we doing here exactly? We're not doing the Hobbit, we're not doing Lord of the Rings. We're just wandering around. The kids are playing in the river. Someone gets their boat smashed, and so what? And again, it's this sort of indulgence in this sort of like beautiful little scenes which don't actually mean much. Where's the character development? Where is the antagonist? Instead, we have like one orc hiding under the stairs. What is this, Harry Potter? Now, moving onwards swiftly, obviously, I want to talk about Galadriel. Lady Galadriel. Now, here's a person who has had huge conflict in her life. She has a love story there. She has a conflict with man and elves. She has a lot of abuse in her life in terms of her history line. And she's also been tempted by the dark side many, many times. We have yet to see that in Galadriel. Maybe it's coming later down the line, I don't know. But I haven't seen one hint of it yet. And that's worrying me, because all I'm seeing is a perfect being. I'm seeing a person that is sort of like can climb mountains. She can jump lakes. She can deal with death. She can deal with grievance. She can deal with any man, beast, alien, whatever's thrown at her. I don't see one bit of weakness in her whatsoever. Now, in the original trilogy, we obviously saw when the Galadriel put on the ring of power, she just immediately turned and she sort of got sucked into the dark spell. And you thought, wow, here's a person who's actually quite weak, can be turned quite easily. Well, where is the turning? Where is that chapter in her life where she's faced that conflict? Instead, I see again prettifying, beautiful shots of her hair flowing in the wind. She looks stunning, don't get me wrong, but what does it mean? Where's the meaning? Where's the character development? Where's the love story as well? Who is she in love with? I can't tell. It's all over the place. There's not that sort of anchor in the sand for Galadriel where I'm sort of saying, it's the antagonist again. What is the driver that is pushing Galadriel forward here in the story? It just feels like she's connecting with these elves in the mountain. She's killing a troll there. Then she's walking along, these icy paths. Then she's announcing something in a throne room. It's like she's a jack of all trades. Who is this person? So, that was a real disappointment, because I was hoping for a lot from Galadriel. And now I just want to talk about sort of, the aesthetic of the film, the general feel. Now, we know that Peter Jackson was approached a few years ago about his thoughts on coming into the project. Does he want to be involved? Jackson, is on tape as saying, "Yeah, I'd love to be involved. Throw me the script and let's have a chat." Well, Amazon unfortunately never threw him the script, and he's admitted that openly. And it shows, because the aesthetic finish of the series is wildly different to the Jackson-esque era. I'm not sure even if any of this was shot in New Zealand or not, whether it's just all blue screen and VR, but whatever it is, the fabric is totally different. We've clearly got an overuse of CG, especially for the landscape shots, where we know that New Zealand was responsible for those rich, hyper real, well, real, shall we say, shots where the Uruk-hais are running the plains, and the warlords are running across Rohan in their horses. Unfortunately, in this series, it's just too obvious it's CG. It looks cheap and it looks very swift, like they've rushed it. And that's a real shame, because they could have had an opportunity just to, just even if you filmed it in Scotland, it would have been better. And it's missing. And this is where Game of Thrones starts to sort of and the House of Dragon trumps it because they are using real locations and they are using that sort of real fabric to bring that realism across for the actors. Now, again, that follows through to the Weta Workshops. So Jackson, again, using Weta Workshops in New Zealand for all of the armor, the helmets, the weaponry, every brooch, every bit of thread, hand-stitched, lovingly made. Yes, I see some good costume design, but I also see some weakness, especially on, the elf headsets. They look like they've been made for a pageant. They don't look real. The leaves look flaky. They don't look like gold. And I'm kind of sort of seeing a little bit of slippage there again on the sets. So that's a real shame, and coming back to the weapon side, where are the weapons? We've seen a palantir, we've seen a broadsword. I think we might have seen Glamdring in one shot and Dural. These are just, a few weapons. There is thousands of weapons in Tolkien's universe, and certainly on mass, we want to see some Gondorian, armies coming together. We want to see some dwarves pull together for some hammer throws. I'm just not seeing that conflict. And again, it's focused so much on the politics, and I mean the politics of the universe of Middle Earth. And this is where it falls apart, where the fans are having this conflict because the politics don't reflect the real story that Tolkien was saying. And I think there's that sort of disparity between the written words of Tolkien and the politics that he seeded versus, words that have been injected, changed, altered, amended, brought to the modern era, blah, 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 blah. And that's where we get this sort of hot potch of, I'm not sure if I'm believing this. That's quite a little cool thing there they did, but then it falls apart and it feels like a patchwork quilt. I've got little bits of everything, but I can't see the big picture, and I'm waiting for that. And to be honest, it's unbelievable. But I actually fell asleep on episode 2, and that's the first time I've done that, I think, ever. I couldn't quite believe it, but I just sort of nodded off halfway through because the pace was just so slow. Let's hope that series 3, 4, 5, whatever gets better. But what I'm seeing right now is something that is really not doing the franchise justice, and that's clearly evident by the audience reviews. And it's a shame because we know the budget was huge here. We know the contacts were obvious for Amazon to approach, Jackson being one of them, that they looks like they've semi-thrown him under the bus here by not getting him involved, and they're now paying the price for it. Unfortunately, there's no way of buying, audience love. You really do have to seed it properly, thoroughly, and show that respect. So, as Gandalf once said, "Run, you fools!"